I don't envy the work it takes to keep an annual franchise like MLB The Show going. There's so much to do and perilously little time to do it, whether it's adding new features, fixing the things people didn't like, or writing and producing an entire new season of the Negro Leagues. It's especially hard when all that time and effort often gets distilled down to a single question: is it worth upgrading from last year? Thanks in large part to fundamental changes to the way Road to the Show and Diamond Dynasty work, MLB The Show 25 answers that question with a resounding yes.
Drilled in the air, high and deep right field. That's back there. And it's gone! Home run!
The actual baseball hasn't changed a lot this year, which I don't mind, but there are nice tweaks throughout. For starters, new QuickTime events that can happen when you are locked into controlling a single player rather than the whole team. The most notable of these is this one, to avoid tags. I was a little nervous that it would make stealing bases too easy, but the prompt only seems to come up occasionally, and is rare enough to feel more like a treat than a crutch. Infielders now have a few different initial reactions that can have a big impact on how quickly they get to the ball too. This mostly means that poor defenders will play more like it now, so the net effect is worse defense, but I think it's a worthwhile trade-off that makes great defenders more valuable, particularly in franchise mode. There's also a new ambush hitting feature where you can cheat towards inside or outside pitches, making it easier to hit on the side you choose and harder on the side you don't. I like it in theory, though I've ultimately had more success staying neutral, and so I only rarely use it. Hitting overall still feels great, though something feels a little off about perfect contact at the moment. You still get the same satisfying crack of the bat, but it seems like the vast majority of the time it results in this, which is way too little payoff for what should be the best possible hits. Hopefully that gets adjusted over time. Franchise, where you get to take control of your favorite team and right the wrongs of ownership, like adding a badly needed impact bat to my beloved Mariners, is pretty similar to last year. The custom game entry, which lets you decide how often you need to intervene in games, remains one of my favorite features. The way you offer free agent contracts has been overhauled. You now prioritize a small selection of targets and you accumulate interest from them as days pass. It does a great job simplifying the free agent process, and I like the strategy around deciding between joining the pursuit of marquee free agents versus rounding out my roster. All that is to say, the core of the show 25 remains as solid as ever, focusing on some small but appreciated updates over sweeping overhauls. And while they may not have fundamentally changed, franchise and March to October both take advantage of new production elements, like player versus player comparisons. The new GOAT difficulty is as hard as it sounds too, with fast pitches, aggressive breaks on balls, and a very small plate coverage indicator. I will freely admit it's much too hard for me, though I expect some people who crave punishing challenges will enjoy this one. Road to the Show, where you take control of your own custom ball player as they lead up to and then eventually enter the major league, is where you'll find some of the larger changes year over year. And they do a fantastic job reinvigorating the mode. Unlike previous years where you participate in the combine before being drafted into the league, now you begin as an amateur all the way back in high school. It's brief, but playing out the end of senior year and trying to impress scouts and recruiters while you chase a championship is a fun twist. Pinky Rogers, my two-way pitcher and first baseman, dominated the competition and found himself firmly in the crosshairs of 24 big league clubs and, in another new addition to the show, college scouts.
First pitch coming your way next.
This led to a legitimately interesting choice. Do I jump straight into pro ball and start working my way up, or do I go to college, time skip to the end of senior year, and try to become a highly polished, highly drafted blue chip prospect? I opted for the student-athlete route and accepted the offer to play for TCU, one of the 8 real colleges to choose from. The authenticity was impressive, from these recreated jerseys to the distinct as metal bats made contact with the ball. Choosing that route meant I arrived at the minor leagues with higher stats and could make the jump from AA to AAA much faster than in previous years, which is a big improvement from what has historically been a bit of a slog. The other big change is to how players are upgraded. Previous iterations of the show had a use it to improve it model, where success with specific actions, like hitting against left-handed pitching, slowly raised those particular attributes. That's now replaced by a token system, where you get points to allocate. It might sound like a subtle difference, but it massively changes how you develop as a player. Every good at-bat, pitch, play in the field, or training session accumulates progress, which makes the pull of playing just one more game very difficult to resist and has made Road to the Show hard for me to put down. One of the marquee features of the show is the Negro League storyline, which returns for its third season. It remains one of the most impressive modes in any sports game, combining a mini documentary featurette about Negro League stars like Cool Papa Bell or Caleb Turkey Stearns with playable moments from their careers. It's once again anchored with stories from Bob Kendrick, the magnetic president of the Negro League Museum, and continues to stand out as an excellent overlap of history and gameplay.
Of course, he earned his nickname Bullet because he got that thing up to the plate in a hurry.
That said, new stories aside, this mode is functionally identical to the previous two iterations, which puts it in a bit of an odd place. I praised the debut of the Negro League in my MLB The Show 23 review, but the lack of advancement over the last few years is disappointing. The vignettes are excellent, but the gameplay moments are still very basic. I know they can do more unique and interesting things, like when your entire defense sat around you when you pitch as Satchel Paige in the Negro League Season 1, and the fact that they don't do that a lot more feels like a missed opportunity to make the gameplay side of this mode stand out. The other piece that sticks out is the notable absence of an expansive storyline focused on an individual player, like we had with Derek Jeter in the show 24. That extensive look into the captain wasn't perfect, but the branching paths and rewards seemed like the next evolution of the storyline's model. It felt like we were just scratching the surface of what storylines could be, especially when there's no shortage of incredible stories from the last century of baseball history. So the show 25 not running with that momentum is a tough pill to swallow. Diamond Dynasty, the live service corner of the show where you gather players via card collecting to form your baseball team, is back with a few excellent changes of its own. First, sets and seasons, where cards were only usable during a specific time frame before being retired in most modes, is officially over, and I am so glad for that. Some great cards are rewarded for grinding through multifaceted programs, and it never seemed worth putting in the work for players that were going to be forced to the bench eventually. Now, if you go through the effort to get this, you get to keep it. It's a very, very good change. The other big update is the inclusion of a new single-player mode called Diamond Quest, which is sort of like a roguelite-inspired board game. It sounds strange, but it's honestly a pretty fun way to play. You roll a die each turn, and every space you cross can hide a gameplay challenge, a reward of some kind, or nothing at all. The objective is to get to the stadium, or stadiums, and win a 3-inning game there with your squad. If you win, you get to keep the rewards you accumulated and get a chance at a high-level card dropping. It's fun, very replayable since the contents of the tiles are randomized, and pretty generous with its rewards. I particularly appreciated that you get to choose your difficulty for the stadium games. Sometimes it's nice to just take the easy win, while other times it's worth the risk of losing what you picked up by aiming for a harder challenge, since that increases your odds of getting the best drops at the end. MLB The Show remains one of the best sports series around. The new upgrade system and the amateur portion of your player's journey have reinvigorated Road to the Show, while the shift away from sets and seasons has righted Diamond Dynasty's biggest wrong. While it's a bit of a bummer that the storyline's feature isn't living up to its full potential, it remains a worthwhile and important inclusion that has reached beyond the game of baseball. All the small touches, like updated infielder reactions and new QuickTime events, have the on-field action in a great place too. It's not always easy for an annual franchise to justify the move to a new entry, but in the case of MLB The Show 25, it does more than enough to make me glad it has arrived. For more, check out our reviews of Assassin's Creed Shadows or WWE 2K25. And for everything else, stick with IGN.